Mother was a hard worker, very strict. We had to work from the time we were old enough to have a dish rag in our hand, I think. But Mother was very strict and made us do things the right way and taught us the way that we should do things. All about good housekeeping and cooking, and she was just a strict taskmaster. But it didn't hurt one of us. Not one.
Well, she was really quite a lady. She ruled the roost. She was the boss, but there wasn't anything she couldn't do. And if she told us to do something, we done it. There was not, in a minute or stuff like you get now, you got up and done it. Now, as far as cooking, Mother done all of that. We'd stir the gravy or something, but she'd done all of that. But we done the housework. And she saw to it that we done it good and right. And she could cook, she could do anything. And she was the boss of everybody. But then she just seemed like she was real strict. And yet she really wasn't. She had a hard life. And she didn't have time to read to you, or and for a fact, she didn't really care if you did. There was more important things to do than that. And then there was a lot of heartache in those days, lots of trials.
I remember one time Mother and Barbara Jurgensen was in the Mutual presidency. And they put on a one-act play, I guess it was. And I don't remember too much about it, only that there was supposed to be wallpapering. And while they were practicing, Mother accidentally put her foot in the bucket that had the paste in it. And so then they added that right into the play, so that when they put it on that night, Mother got her foot in the paste. The bucket on the foot in the paste. But her and Barbara worked in the MIA, but Mother was talented. She could do about everything but sing. She couldn't carry a tune, and I'm just like her.
She could sing. The only time was once in a while she'd roll pie dough, and I'd stand there and sing little ditties, and we'd stand there and watch her, and she'd get the pies ready, and I can't remember the song and she could play a little on the piano, not very much, but she didn't have time to do that. He was a real kind, good-natured man. He come from, I think there were 6 boys in Dad's family, no girls. And he was just kind of in the middle, but he was always happy-go-lucky. Didn't seem like he worried or had anything, but Mother done that. She had to do all the disciplining and they had a hard life. They had to homestead on the mountain, and they had to live up there several months out of the year in order to get it. And we also he had the farm. Mother would go on the mountain and take the little kids, and Dad would run the farm. He'd come up there horseback without a saddle sometimes to the cabin whistling when he'd come in. Sometimes it was dark. You just never knew when he was going to come. But we were always glad to see him. He always brought us a little treat. And Dad drove the school bus, and he farmed a little, and he liked to visit. I just really guess he had the farm and a few sheep. They didn't have any cattle in at all. It was just sheep, and they'd have to take them on the mountain. And then Nephi, well, Dad worked on the farm too. They had some farming because we had to move out there in that middle house and live and rent the house in Sigurd because they needed the money.
Doing stuff, Daddy was easy going, and Mother had to make sure that all the bills were paid and everything was done, because Dad, he just lay back.
Do you think your mother and dad were happy?
Yes, I do. I think they were very happy. They were as different as night and day, but they seemed to be very happy. And you never did hear him quarrel much. You never did hear him. Oh, Mother would get mad at him once in a while when he wouldn't do what she thought he ought to right now. Because Mother wanted stuff done right now. But they were just good parents.
They had, Bobby was the oldest, and Hal was next, Fawn was next. We were all about 2 years apart. Dorothy, myself, Maxine, Virginia, and then Tim was, I think he was about 6 years old, younger than Virginia, maybe less. And of course, I was kind of there in the middle, so Bobby had left. As soon as they could, they'd leave and go up here to Richfield and live with Grandma and Grandpa. And she and Fawn both, Bobby got a job at Chesty's and, well, maybe at that Sprouse Ritz for a while. And Fawn moved up with him, but I don't know if she ever worked. She was just kind of pretty, and Grandma liked her a lot, but Dorothy and I were kind of, had to be the boys. And Maxine was never very well, and then Virginia was younger. Dorothy used to go over and steal Warnick's ice cream. They'd churn that ice cream and package and all that. He used to do it, and she'd wait till they'd gone to bed, and then she'd go over and pick a dish and get the ice cream. Oh, she's really full of it. Dorothy was always, had to push me all the time, but she always in trouble. Mother knew what we were like, you know, but gosh, we'd do things that I didn't want to do, and I'd just beg her, oh, she said, we can do that. We'd always get spanked. I tried, when I saw we were going to get it, I tried to run away from her, but she got us. We got it. Yeah. And I think when she found out she was pregnant with Tim, I think that just about done her in. But then, when it was a boy, it was a different story, but she would have been good. She was always good to us, but she was the boss, and she had a hard role to hold. Daddy was really good-natured, and he liked to go with the men, and we always had boarders, and she was always cooking.
Tell me about going up on the mountain.
Well, we went up, and most of the time we had to walk behind a horse and hold on to its tail to help, you know, when you get tired. Most of the time we were just like billy goats, and would run right ahead of the horses and we'd go up the face. We never went to McMillan's then, and there was not that other Hancock Flat. You'd go up from Horse Valley, and but you'd have a tent at the seats and a tent at the saddle, and then Daddy had the cabin. It was fun when we got to the cabin, but then we had to go from the cabin, a mile anyway down to nowhere to get water, wouldn't it be? That was the nearest water. And it was always fun when we could go to one of the cabins and stay, rather than living in a tent. But we did, and we probably lived in the sheep wagon down in Horse Valley a lot, and then they'd put a tent up because we usually had a sheep herder that'd have to have a place to sleep. And then we'd go from there up to Parley's cabin. I can't remember staying there very much, because once we left Horse Valley, we'd go to the Saddle, and there we put a tent between, is it nowhere? Anyway, that's where we had to get our water. And boy, when we went up there, we'd go for a week or two. They'd have 2 pack horses and we walked, and the horses were loaded with just shortening and lard it was, and flour, and it was luxury to have eggs and things like that, but we survived. Deer meat, probably kill a mutton, and milk, the potatoes, because you couldn't take milk. And they did have a cow up there, but that was kind of before my time. I think that they called her Old Diner, and they took her up when they were in that cabin on the top on Daddy, and they had a cow. We have 2 meals a day and listen to the radio. We'd sing and play outside. Now, you'd go crazy if you told Ben to go out and see if the sheep was okay. But I remember this wasn't too many years ago. Mother and Maxine and Virginia and I don't know if there was, I think Daddy had been there, and he went down off the mountain, and this storm come up, and they put those coal oil flares out on the rocks to scare the coyotes away from them. And you'd have to, well, if you remember where Dad's cabin was, and then that flat, if you'd put it in maybe 2 blocks, maybe 3 blocks to get there. And it was just thunder and lightning and blowing, and she had lit those flares. She was afraid that they'd blow over and start a fire. She got us to bed, and she took off, pitch dark, thunder, lightning. I remember watching out that window. I'm the only one that ever worried. The rest of them went to sleep, but I'd watch for her to come back. She took a flare. That didn't last very long. It blew it out. And she went down there, and the wind had blown out fire, so she was okay with that and come back. But, they don't make ladies like that anymore, or men either. They'd say, oh, let it burn. Not her. Boy, and then we didn't have sleeping bags, so we'd have homemade quilts and a canvas underneath, and then roll them up, and that you'd sit on during the day in the cabin, and then at night you'd just roll it all out, and 2 or 3 of you'd sleep in that. And then they'd have one cot. But that wasn't a very big cabin. And in the day we just had to entertain ourselves. We'd go out and play on those rocks, but it was a real treat to have a day come when we could take all the dirty clothes and go down to the creek, and she'd make a fire and heat water. We'd all have a bath in the same water, the kids would, And she'd look all over for wood ticks, and then we'd wash clothes and hang them around on the bushes. And it had to take a whole day, and then you'd walk back up to the cabin. We had a tent at the Saddle, And then and Dad's cabin. Then we go to the big rock down, and they'd put up another tent. I can't remember us staying in that tent. The sheep herders mostly stayed there. And then there was Parley, well, his cabin was on the other side, but there was Uncle Alvin's. And, yeah, that's that way. And then Nephi had his. And it was always fun when we could move into one of those cabins. Uncle Alvin never did go up there very much. I think he just had the property and had the CCC boys build it. That's the way we lived. We'd be up there for weeks at a time and come down, and when it was time to do fruit or weed sugar beets or